I wanted to talk to you about problem 15 on problem set 2 because I didn't have room to really show how I got the answer on the problem solution set. So if you got that answer, fine, just ignore this video. But if you're curious how come the derivative of sine x divided by cosine of x, also by the way known as tangent of x, came out to be secant squared x, well, here's why. So that's the problem. Notice what I do want to point out is later on in calculus, this is also the same. Sine x over cosine x is also tangent of x. So the derivative of tangent of x is also going to be this same answer. And when written this way, we can see obviously we're supposed to use the quotient rule. And remember, the quotient rule is low d high minus high d low, square the bottom, and away we go. So we're just going to follow that little dumb rhyme. And so we start out with low d high, and this is low, this is high. So low d high is cosine of x just by itself. D high, I know by looking at my calculus little half-sheet cheat sheet, derivative of sine x is cosine x, so that's going to be cosine of x, cosine x. So low d high is cosine x times cosine x. And then minus high d low, so this is high and this is low, so low d high minus high d low is going to be minus high is sine of x, sine of x, and then d low means the derivative of cosine x, and I know that the derivative of cosine x is itself minus sine x. Remember, those are not symmetrical. Derivative of sine x is positive cosine x, but derivative of cosine x is this minus sine x, and so they're just not symmetrical. Alright, and then square the bottom and away we go. So I take whatever's on the bottom of the equation, cosine of x, and square it. And one way to write cosine of x squared is with the squared right in between. I could as well write parentheses. I could write parentheses here and then squared, but cosine squared of x is the traditional way to write it. I think it's quicker, so you have to write less parentheses. Okay, well, notice one thing is that this minus sign and this minus sign cancel out. So what you really get is cosine of x times cosine of x plus sine of x times sine of x all over cosine squared x. And that can be written as cosine squared x plus sine squared x all over cosine squared x. And you might remember from trigonometry, maybe algebra 2, that sine squared x plus cosine squared x always equals 1. And also cosine squared x plus sine squared x also always equals 1. So really you get 1 over cosine squared x, which can also be written as secant squared x, and that's how we get the final answer. 1 over cosine is secant, and 1 over cosine squared is secant squared x. So that's why the cryptic number 15, the answer was just secant squared x. It was a long problem, but it simplified a lot.